Hello, for those who don't know me, my name is Abby, but hopefully by this time you do. Today I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about medicinal marijuana and the legalization of it. So I feel like whenever people hear the word marijuana, their first thoughts go to Cheech and Chong. That one picture of Obama that everyone seemed to see, and Woodstock. I think what a lot of people don't get or kind of refuse to understand is that marijuana, it does have a lot of good benefits to it. It's not just some drug that teenagers are using and getting high off of, but it has really good benefits as far as medical conditions and diseases go. Um, I think it's still kind of an unexplored territory, so there's a lot that we do know, but then there's even more that we don't know. And so that's why I feel like there needs to be more funding, there needs to be more research and all of that to kind of show us what it can actually do. According to drugabuse.gov, in fiscal year 2015, the National Institute of Health supported 281 projects and over $111 million on cannabinoid research. Out of the 281 projects and $111 million, only 49 projects, which was roughly $21 million, examined the therapeutic properties of cannabinoids. And then out of that, 15 projects, which was roughly $9 million, their prime focus was cannabidiol, which is also known as CBD, which is one of, I think it's the 8 chemical forms that are found in the actual marijuana plant itself. So out of the $111 million, not even half of it was used on the research that's definitely needed. And then out of the 281 projects, roughly 22 to 23% were projects pertaining to CBD and its therapeutic properties. And with that, the National Institutes of Health budget, it was $32 billion. So you have $32 billion, but only $111 million of it went into the research of this. And a lot of it was research on the negative aspects of the drug. So they're trying to come up with, overdoses and everything like that, but they can't. They're showing to prove more positive benefits than negative. So I think that, every good thing has to start out somewhere. So that $111 million does seem small, but I also feel like at the same time, this has been kind of an issue for a few years now that number needs to increase as far as research goes. So I'm going to go over with you a few conditions and diseases that have been proven to be beneficial from the use of marijuana. So our first one is epilepsy, and one of the main chemicals found in marijuana, like I said, is called cannabidiol, otherwise known as CBD. This chemical does not give that high effect. It doesn't get you stoned or anything. It's generally placed either under the tongue or swiped on the inside of the cheek. So it's made in either an oil or a wax form. This makes it easier to digest through the system. And our first type of epilepsy is called Dravet syndrome. It's a rare type of epilepsy that it can't be controlled by medications. It's usually diagnosed between birth and 4 years old. So like I said, medications don't help it. There's nothing to help it. So a lot of the people who are diagnosed, they die before 20 years old. Here we have Charlotte Figi. She was diagnosed at age 2 with Dravet syndrome. They were a family based out of Colorado. They were on the news kind of a lot whenever it first started because the parents were getting such backlash for giving their kid all people saw was marijuana. Like, oh, you're getting your daughter high. But what people didn't see was that it was actually really helping her. So she started out before using the CBD. She was having up to 300 seizures a week, lasting as long as 4 hours. So what kind of parent wants to put their child through that? At this point, the Figis had already signed a DNR for their daughter, so they knew the statistics, they knew everything. So they were just kind of planning it ahead of time to know that, this could happen. For about 2 years, Charlotte was put on a diet that was supposed to force her body to make these ketones throughout her body. And these natural chemicals in her body, they were supposed to suppress the seizures. So after about 2 years, she started to have the seizures again, and she was having really negative side effects. She suffered bone loss. Her immune system was super weak. And she kind of had some behavioral issues as well. Until the parents, they had finally done a lot of research, a lot of reading, a lot of talking to each other, and they found 2 doctors that signed off on Charlotte's medicinal marijuana forms. It took them a while to even find one doctor to sign off because a lot of these doctors didn't want to give a child this small because there wasn't that much research on it yet. They didn't want to give her any type of marijuana, but they saw that the parents had tried so many things and they needed answers. So they decided to sign off. Their first time getting it, they paid $800 for just 2 ounces. That lasted them a little bit over a week. And so even after her very first dose, she didn't have a seizure for that hour. And then they tried the next 2 hours. And then after a full week of using it, she had 0 seizures. And now Charlotte is 6 years old. She gets 1 dose of CBD twice a day, and it's mixed in with her food, so she gets the oil kind, so it makes it easier to digest, like I said. She is still having seizures, but compared to the 300 per week, she's having roughly 2 to 3 a month. And those are actually seizures in her sleep, so they're not as extreme as the ones that she was having when she was awake. Our next type of epilepsy is called Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, and this one is diagnosed after the age of 4 and well into adulthood. There are 2 types of seizures associated with this. The first type is tonic, and that's when your body goes completely stiff. Your eyes will deviate upward, and that's kind of the most common seizure that you'll see. But then there's also atonic, and that's complete loss of consciousness, and then your body just goes limp. And since 2004, there have been 14 studies about the use of CBD to help treat LGS and its symptoms, and it's been proven to reduce and even eliminate seizures altogether. Our next type of condition is dementia and Alzheimer's, and unlike epilepsy, using the CBD, whenever treating Alzheimer's, they use the THC. So that's another form, that's another chemical found in the marijuana plant, and it's also given in very small doses. It'll react positively in the brain when given in tiny doses. It's been found to kind of slow the production of the toxic clumps called beta amyloid proteins. Those are found in the brain, which have been thought to start the progression of Alzheimer's disease. So where healthy brains are able to break down that amyloid, Alzheimer's brains cannot. So since they can't break it down, it starts to form these insoluble fragments that turn into plaque, and that's what starts to deteriorate your brain, and then you go further and further. So you have 2 receptors called endocannabinoid in your system, and so those are called CB1 and CB2 receptors. So CB1, it's found throughout the brain, but it's mostly where your memory and your learning take place, and that's also called your hippocampus. Then you have CB2, and that's mostly like immune cells, and it works with your learning, your memory, your appetite, and the way that your body responds to stress. So does it tense up, or how do you respond to it? And so since the Alzheimer's brain cannot produce the endocannabinoids with those receptors, the use of THC will allow it to kind of bind to those receptors, and it'll stimulate its activity. So where you have a healthy brain here that can produce them, you have the Alzheimer's brain here, and so those clumps, they start to make your brain deteriorate and form holes and then shrink it all together. And our next one is cancer and chemotherapy. I looked at a patient named Jeff Morso. He was diagnosed with colon cancer in 2013, and he was about to undergo 12 rounds of chemotherapy. And along with those 12 rounds, his doctor was prescribing him over 12 medications, prescription and over-the-counter, to take to help deal with the chemotherapy. So dealing with pain, nausea, vomiting, anxiety, antidiarrheas to help kind of get all that out of his system because he had so much in it that he also had to get it out. So that was just a lot on his body along with the chemotherapy. So after his seventh round of chemo, his doctor gave him a form of marijuana that he was able to grind up into his morning coffee, and so he would drink it that way. He's not smoking it, he's not whatever. But after that, he completely threw away all of his meds. So no more prescription, no more over the counter. He was only relying on the marijuana for his chemotherapy treatment. He said that it helped with his sleep, his anxiety, his nausea. It even gave him an appetite because with chemotherapy, you lose your appetite. You just don't want to do anything, and it really helped him. And Jeff is now 70 years old and cancer-free. So also in cancer patients, you'll see them take both forms, the THC and the CBD. So that's why a lot of times they'll either smoke it, drink it, eat it, whatever, because you get all of those in one instead of having to take two. But the CBD will help with symptoms and side effects such as the nausea, pain, inflammation, anxiety while going through treatment. But the THC will also help the patient sleep. It'll reduce the stress. It'll reduce the anxiety. It'll reduce pain. But like I said, it'll help increase the appetite, which they're now looking at it into anorexic patients, since they are seeing that it does increase that appetite, that this can also help anorexia. So then we have marijuana that was classified as a Schedule I drug in 1970. Some other drugs that are classified under Schedule I category are cocaine, heroin, and meth. So here on this chart we have the rise of overdoses from 2000 to 2016. This very blue one right here, that shows synthetic opioids other than methadone. So that is like your fentanyl, your morphine, and all of that. And it also shows that in 2015, fentanyl, which is stronger than morphine, but it's made into heroin, killed over 20,000 people. But both fentanyl and morphine are available as prescriptions. So these drugs that are available as prescriptions and are legal are being made into the illegal drugs that are classified the same as marijuana. So you have this natural plant, this substance that's clearly helping people, but it's still categorized under these drugs that are killing people, but they have no proof of marijuana killing people. So I think that in order for this to be researched to its full potential and we can understand its benefits and everything about it, the funding and everything needs to be increased. There needs to be awareness, and it needs to be decriminalized. I mean, there's a lot to it, and it's legal in some states, but it's still illegal in a lot of ways in all of the states. So we need to get that up, and then we can see all of its benefits.